Which brings us to the first substantive item on the agenda today is the Kiwi Rail update. And we welcome to the front then John Knight, Bevan Assink and Bobby Fisher, who will be talking to us about the update from Kiwi Rail on its Auckland program. And I know some councillors have been asking for this opportunity, so it's be a good chance to quiz Kiwi Rail. We just they're just coming in now. Had to catch a bus, had to get a bus replacement. I understand. I made them a little bit later. That's okay. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yes. All right. So while the Kiwi Rail team just getting themselves organised there, we have a presentation that will be up on the slide, and this was sent through to councillors previously. So over to you.
Kia ora tātou everybody. Mr Chair, thank you for accommodating our slight lateness. What I'd like to do this morning is front foot the disruption we've had to our customers and patronage within the Auckland network with the failure of our points in the Britomart. And what I'll do is I'll hand to my technical expert, but sorry, before I'll just take a pause, I better introduce who we have. On my right we have Bobby Fisher, who's our Capital Program Director of the NZ Up program for upgrading the network in Auckland, and the Director of the CRL program for Kiwi Rail, Bevan Assink. So the technical expertise resides with them, and the general expertise sits with me. So I'm going to hand to Bevan to give you a summary of what happened this morning and what we're doing about it and how we're going to recover the rest of today. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Pretty generous in giving us the technical expert tag. But in terms of what happened this morning, so as you're well aware, unfortunately, we've had another failure of our points down in Britomart. We put those in over Christmas, along with some of the track realignment that we've been doing for the CRL in terms of its final state. We've had a number of failures down there with these new points machines, unfortunately. We've traced it back now through to the frequency converter. So this is essentially the brains of the points machine itself, and this takes the inputs from the signalling system around when to move them and so on. And unfortunately, we've sent 3 of them back to the manufacturer, and they've done forensics into those and found that there's a batch defect, a latent batch defect that sits within the frequency converter. So we're working with them now around a recovery plan, but it looks very likely that we will need to go through and replace all the frequency converters over the next coming months. So there's about 16 of those at the moment. We've got about 6 in operation down in Britomart. We're also installing a number into the CRL tunnels at the moment and everything, and then we've got some more that's going down into Wellington. So it's a very concerning issue for us, and we're certainly working hard around trying to remedy it immediately. We're actually to some degree relieved as well, though, because we now have a smoking gun. For many months there, we were getting these intermittent failures, and we were struggling to trace it back to the root cause. So thankfully now we do have a root cause, and we do have a plan in place and now how to manage that going forward. Unfortunately, these don't show signs of when they're going to fail, so we aren't able to predict it. We are able to give a general guidance based on the number of movements that the machines make, and so I've got my team at the moment looking at all the movement analysis on the different machines to start giving us a prediction on when the machines may likely fail, and then we'll look to proactively swap them out when we get a new batch coming in the next week or so. So we are looking to try and mitigate the impacts of this. We'll also work with John's infrastructure team around having urgent response in Britomart and all that to minimise the impacts when we do have an unplanned failure. So we are looking at a range of different ways to manage this, but unfortunately I can't guarantee that we won't have more failures going forward until we can completely get these frequency converters changed out, unfortunately.
Mr Chair, thanks Bevan. Can I just add to that the immediacy is to make sure that we have response teams on site, and that we have the ability to provide immediate technician support, and that is part of our standby plan. The other thing to note is we've had a third-party international expert come in to assist Bevan and his team do a complete audit, and that is completing stage 1, and it will go into stage 2 and stage 3, which is a complete network signalling control interface review. That means looking at the brain of all of the signalling systems we have and the mechanical machinery to make sure all of the upgrades Bobby's teams have completed in line with CRL are fit for purpose to run 16 trains per hour at CRL day 1, which is our commitment to our sponsors and our commitment to the people of Auckland. Okay, we might, if there are no questions, Mr. Chair, I'll continue.
We'll pick up any questions at the end.
Okay, cool. Thank you very much. Can I just push through 3 slides to the forward, please, if I could? There we go, sitting here. See, my technical expert is operating the... Thanks, Bobby. One more. Yeah.
Oh, point it that way, okay.
Okay, so what we'll cover today, thanks Bobby, what we'll cover today is a major upgrade of the program, the quick fly pass. We'll then do our commitments to forward works planning for CRL opening on day 1 and the 16 trains per hour commitment, and we'll then give you a quick current infrastructure focus update. What we will deal with today is my discussions with the Deputy Mayor to give more transparency and detail around the wheel-rail interface issues and the screeching we're getting around certain parts of the network and what we're doing to de-risk that. And we'll also look at the budget spend announcement from government and how we will optimise that spend to provide a better network service for our people within Auckland.
Thanks, John. Before I kick off with this and provide an overview of readiness of KiwiRail's projects for CRL, I just hand over to Bevan to provide a quick status update on CRL itself.
So on the CRL project, you're probably aware over the Matariki weekend we were doing a lot of signalling integration work. So that was essentially looking to connect the CRL network, signalling network into the wider metro network. So we've done the interfaces at Britomart and Mount Eden, and now we're progressively working our way up through the tunnel system to bring the signalling infrastructure into commission and so on. We've also, from the traction power point of view, so the motive system for the trains, we've livened a traction section cabin up at Mount Eden, so that'll be the feed at the top end of the tunnel, and also a traction section cabin down in Key Park, so that'll be the bottom feed. And now we're starting to look to move into Britomart and liven up through the different OLE rooms and into the tunnel system itself as well. All the track work is in, and we're going through the process of certifying that in terms of its geometric alignments. And all the comm system and fibre has been installed and tested, and that's linked back to the Auckland Regional Operational Centre. So from a rail systems point of view, we're quite comfortable with how progress is going. There's a key date coming up in August when we're looking to electrify the whole of the CRL, and then obviously that'll then put us in good stead to moving towards November when we're looking to run the first test trains. So from a key rail perspective, we're comfortable with how the project's rolling and all that. We won't speak around AT sort of concerns around the stations. We know that there's still a fair bit of work to be done there and everything, but by and large, there's certainly good progress being made. And as long as we can get to a November date and start running some trains, that'll allow us to progress well into our testing commissioning phase, which will run something in the order of about 6 to 9 months as we work through single, multi-trains, emergency testing and stress testing and so on. So from my point of view, everything's going reasonably well.
Thanks, Bevan. So this slide here talks to the readiness of KiwiRail's major works programs for the opening of CRL. So the slide has been presented before, so I won't spend too much time on it, just call out the updates that are of note from recent works. So across the board, we have a number of major projects that all need to be done in time for CRL day 1. That is to enable the efficiency of the CRL timetable that John and Bevan spoke to, with 16 trains an hour through the CRL itself. Just running through that list in terms of major milestones that have been achieved. The Werribee Key Park milestone has successfully opened up a section of its new third main track, and that has been handed over to Auckland Transport and Auckland One Rail for testing of their new EMU trains. In terms of the P2P electrification project, Papakura and Pukekohe, we've had a very significant milestone over Matariki, just been, where we successfully energized the line. So that's 20 new kilometres of overhead line that is now energized. So the extent of the electrified network in Auckland now goes down to Pukekohe. With the Drury Rail Stations projects, that's still ongoing. There's no change there, where 2 out of 3 stations will be ready in time for CRL opening. They're not a core requirement, and the 3rd station will be ready soon after opening. The remaining projects are all ongoing, so just a couple of things to note. In the previous version of this presentation, we had termed that Rail Operations Centre slightly differently. Its official name is the Auckland Rail Operations Centre, so we've just corrected that. That was officially opened in April, so that is a joint rail operations centre in Ellerslie, where Auckland Transport, Auckland One Rail and KiwiRail are all co-located. So the feedback from that has been very positive in terms of the level of collaboration and ability to respond immediately to anything, any incidents or concerns on the network. The last item there, just to mention, is we have now received confirmation of funding for the full budget for the rail network rebuild. So that's a huge step forward for KiwiRail in terms of our ability to deliver the core works that are necessary for CRL Day 1. And we're working closely with Auckland Transport and Auckland One Rail at the moment to firm up what that delivery plan will be, and looking to minimise disruption to the customers as we do the work. This slide here is just an overview of the key projects occurring throughout Auckland. So as you can see, there are works right across the network. There's a lot of investment in readiness for CRL. Most of these projects we've talked to on the previous slide. This just shows it geographically in terms of where it is. And it also shows the location of the rail network rebuild works area. So at the moment, the rail network rebuild team is working in the Papakura and Pukekohe section. So the electrification project runs to a point and it's substantially complete in terms of construction. The rail network rebuild team is coming in straight off the back of that to complete renewals works in that area so that we can get it all done at the time that the line is shut. And this slide here is just a snapshot of the future works program for Auckland. So in terms of growth in Auckland, to recap, this was mentioned at the previous briefing, but KiwiRail and Auckland Transport jointly have produced a strategic rail program that is a forward view of the next 30 years. The 30-year vision is based on future growth areas across Auckland. It is responding to what is foreseen in terms of patronage needs, both for freight and passenger. And the categories you see there are just the broad areas that the 30-year vision looks to focus its development on. So the key thing with the 30-year vision is that it looks at the development as a whole. So as growth increases and infrastructure requirements expand, the 30-year vision is looking at it at the system as a whole and making sure that the maintenance requirements, the requirements for the operator in terms of depots, stabling, fleet facilities, all of those are looked at hand in hand so that the growth in infrastructure investment is moving together with all components at the same pace. What we will just spend a minute on, because there has been a little bit of interest in potential for future expansion at Te Huapai, so I'll just hand over to John to say a bit about that.
Obviously, with the 30-year plan, there needs to be business cases in consultation with our customers of where urban growth for the council is focused. We know there is interest in Huapai area to extend passenger services to that location with local bodies. We've also understood from our customers, Otahu, I believe, in some other areas where they're concerned that we need to optimise the benefit of rail. That will go into our consideration in terms of our plan for the 30-year vision of where we extend those rail services, as Bobby indicated, and they'll be fully included in our assessments and validations of how we increase the services to the general public and our customers of Auckland. So that is in our thinking, but there are a number of gateways to go through. So I just wanted to give Council assurance that that is in our thinking. We are aware of the need to service South Auckland, the south, and also the west, and that is in part of our design thinking. So I'd just like to front foot that we are including that in our thinking, and we have listened and we have heard. Bobby, can you just, yeah, thanks. What I'd like to do now is just give you the dollars and cents of where we landed based on the GPS and the funding allocations for rail, and the benefit that that's going to deliver us for Auckland, particularly in the metro. So in terms of our upgrade program, firstly, most importantly, I want to just reiterate, we have jointly agreed with AT and Auckland One Rail, our rail partners in our alliance, that we will achieve 16 trains per hour in CRL for day one, and we'll lift the level of service across the network. That is our customer promise, that is the expectation of the Crown, and that is the expectation of the local government. And we will deliver on that promise, and that is our aiming mark and our objective. And all of our planning towards the glide path to day one when it opens is to achieve that. The way in which the funding is going to be apportioned to accelerate the decision cycle from now until day one, when we commission and open CRL, is sort of shown on the slide. We've got an additional 159 million to complete our rail network rebuild program, which is dealing with the formation, that's the shingle, the rails, the sleepers, the drainage, that really is the integrity and the heart of our network to make sure that it's fit for purpose. We've then got a backlog renewal spend that the Crown has allocated to both Auckland and Wellington of 107 million, and we're apportioning about half of that amount. We're just finalising the number with AT at the moment and our work plan based on priority assets, of around 50 million of that being allocated for Auckland to assist with expired assets and expiring assets that are critical to replace now, and that will be used for that funding. We've also got from our council and AT, which we're very appreciative of, is a lift in our ANAA, which is our annual track access fund, to actually provide maintenance and renewals to the network, and that is circa 85 to 92 million or thereabouts. When this slide was produced, there has been dialogue with one client who is the governance body to manage the funding for the successful opening of CRL, which AT and Kiwi Rail are represented on, and we're just finalising that detail. At the same time, we're running a parallel program called Metro Transformation, which is enabling our people to have better equipment, better ways of working, and new technologies to be more effective in their maintenance to deliver the timetable. What will you see and what will our approach be? We'll use existing blocks of line, that means the Christmas shut periods and the long weekends, but we're asking for extended access. What that extended access means is that we will need to shut some lines for some periods, and we're going through the impact analysis and the communication strategy of what that looks like with AT, and we will report back on that impact to our customers. But it's really imperative that we do this work, because what we want to have on day one is a network that our people can reliably use, look at their watch and know the train's going to arrive and they're going to get to their destination on time. For us to do that, we have to complete this spend. We've got to spend this money within the next 18 months, 12 to 18 months to get there. So it will mean some more disruption to our customers in terms of timetable and shutting of lines, and more of that will come out by the end of July on what that looks like and what the joint communication strategy will be to the public. I think the rest of it is the rest of it's fine. This slide graphically tries to show you by line what the resultant change will be in terms of achieving 16 trains per hour. If I just look at NAL South, for example, the line really between Wiri Westfield and Wiri through to Papakura, we're going to lift the performance level of that by up to 75%. So we're opening a third main and we're lifting that level of performance to provide more frequent train services and more reliable service to our customers. If I look at the Western train plan, it's going to lift the Western line from Swanson through to Newmarket or Britomart by 33%. This just gives you a visualisation of how much work is going into the network to lift its performance to meet day one. The rest of it, I think it's self-explanatory in terms of the uplift. They're all positive figures. Our focus to get there, as I said before, we've got to remain running a safe railway. We must keep our code of compliance. Those are sacrosanct principles. Disruption management is a key focus that both AET quite rightly and Auckland One Rail have challenged us on. We want you to reduce disruption, reduce the speed restrictions on the network, and that comes by converting the funding that's been given by the Crown and local government in the next 18 months to get us to 16 trains per hour. But that will come with concessions, and those concessions are we may have to shut lines and we may have to reduce the frequency of some of those services to get there. The last point I'd like to cover on this slide is that we've got assured funding for FY25. We do not have assured funding for FY26 and FY27. What we need to do, and what we are doing now, is our homework under what we call the Metro Rail operating model. We're working with our partners AT and Auckland One Rail and putting a unified business case together to go to NZTA to assure we have the maintenance and renewals funding to sustain 16 trains per hour after day one. There is no point getting the objective if you don't have the runway to continue delivering level of service. That is our next challenge after we get to 16 trains per hour. But we need to have that work complete by September this year to go to the Crown and meet the submission deadlines to gain that funding for the future. The last point, and Deputy Mayor Desley and I met on this about 2 weeks ago. I think we need to answer some key questions, and I want to be transparent here. What generates the screeching noise? What are we going to do about it? When are you going to see a result, and what will you get? Okay, so what it's caused is basically it's a combination of the curves, the gradient of the curve, the tight radius curves, particularly around Hobson Bay, Britomart, Vector Curve, some parts on the eastern line. That particular part of the network does have very tight curves. If you don't have the rail wheel sitting on the rail correctly, and if the rail is not ground, and you have the combination of tight radius curves, and you do not lubricate or grease the rail to reduce the friction, you get screeching. Why are we getting the screeching? In 2020, we nearly shut this network because we had cracks in the rail based on legacy funding. We didn't have the funding. We had a thing called the Auckland Metro Recovery Program, which you may remember. We re-railed 134 kilometres of a 200-kilometre network because we had cracks in the rail because it was fatigued. It hadn't been ground because there was no money to replace the rail and there was no money to do preventative maintenance. We've now breached that gap. We're containing what they call the cracking or the rolling contact fatigue, which is the wheel of the rail cars sitting on the rail causing cracks. We've got that under control with grinding. To get that under control, we couldn't lubricate the network because what lubrication does, when you put grease on the network and you have cracks and it rains, that grease goes into the crack and expands it and makes it an even worse problem. So we had to turn the lubricators off. So these are things that sit trackside on 42 locations around the network, and they're activated automatically, right? We're now in a position where we've got the network in September of this year to be at the right profile, and we will start installing rail-side lubrication pots under a 2.5 million repair plan, which Auckland Council has contributed considerable funding to alleviate this problem. That work starts in September. You should see a material change from December through to all of 2025. It will be progressive. We'll target the critical parts of the network where we have screeching and noise, which are Hobson Bay, Oraki Basin, Vector Curve. They are our priority one to address based on the impact it's having to our public. I hope that's given you a snapshot.
Okay. Right. So thanks, John, for that presentation. And I think we should go over to Councillor Simpson. Do you
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, KiwiRail, for fronting up, because there's no doubt that Auckland has been played recently. And we know some of them are not of your making, i.e. short staffing or strikes, but the vast majority of the failure has to deliver a service, probably over 75%, arguably a lot higher, is because of infrastructure faults, which is your job. So I've got two questions about that. My first question is, what is your message to Aucklanders? Because Bevan, I think I heard you say you cannot guarantee failures to the network going forward. So what is your message to Aucklanders about train use until you get ready for CRL? I get the long term, and I think that's great. You're working up to when CRL opens. But I'm really concerned for a number of Aucklanders who use the rail as a major form of public transport. So what's your message to them?
Yeah, thanks, Desley. So when I talk about the guarantee, I'm talking primarily around the points machines and the frequency converters. So I can't guarantee those machines until we change those out, because we obviously have that defect that we've discovered and everything. Once those have been done, then we'll have a lot better chance of giving a better guarantee around their performance, obviously. In terms of the network in the long term, as John was talking about, we're doing a deeper dive review into the signalling and the comm system, because that's one of the key areas that we've had a lot of the failures recently. So we're certainly working to identify where all of these issues lie, and then we'll work hard around how we can manage those and so on. Unfortunately, it is an ageing network with a number of issues that we're having to work through. So I'm very mindful that we don't want to set expectations where it's going to be perfect, and unfortunately it sort of is what it is. But it's not that we're definitely trying our best to make sure that we can eliminate all of these, and then to try and give the best sort of outcome we can.
Could I add, Desla, just I want to break this down into three components, right? The first one is safety. And thank you, Bevan, with respect to signalling. So if I lift this up and I look at the network in totality around what we deliver, firstly, it is a safe network. We would not be running trains if it wasn't safe, because we have an international code of compliance that is benchmarked that we run. It's our rail code. In accordance with the Rail Safety Act, we need to be compliant. We need to deliver that. So that's the first thing, we're safe. The second thing is our reliability average is around anywhere between 85% to 80 to 85 on past performance. It needs to be 95 off memory or above for us to achieve our KPIs. It's not where it needs to be. The reason it's not where it needs to be is because we're on a glide path to improvement. That's no excuse that, it's not an excuse, but it is the actual fact, is that we have a network that is almost like a road that's being reconstructed, where you have a stop-go person in some sections of it, and you have intermittent speed, and it's frustrating for passengers getting to their journeys. So what are we doing about that? We're merging a better improved maintenance program under the Auckland Metro Transformation Project to fund training, to fund capability and equipment, and that's progressive. We've committed with AT to 16 trains per hour, and the modelling and the plan that we've shared with Stacey and Mark and the team, Dean's team, confirms that we are in the right glide path. The problem is, only until the production of the asset management plan, which was a requirement from the Crown for us to have a far better robust understanding of our assets, we've only got there in the last 6 to 12 months. Previous to that, our data was inaccurate. It wasn't fit for purpose, because that was an issue we had to address, that the Crown directed us, because we never had the funding and we never had the system in place that we needed for a modern metro. Remember, this is a freight network that we're putting a metro system over the top of. So it's a progressive glide path. The reality is we have a lumpiness that is going to impact reliability from now until day one. But I can assure you and everyone around this table that we are doing our utmost best we can with the great funding we've received from Crown and local government to get there. But this network is an old network that is being lifted to a modern metro. Go anywhere around the world and look at benchmarking, it will show you show you those statistics.
So, thank you. My next question is, the access charges for Auckland Transport to use your network have risen substantially in recent years, and I understand that they may even go further. So is it reasonable to be increasing those charges when we're not getting the services delivered? I mean, you're asking Auckland Transport to pay, or the Auckland ratepayer, to pay for something that isn't being delivered and being cancelled for a huge amount of time.
So I think, Deputy, this is a question that we've had with our partners around the genesis of why we've set up the Metro Rail operating model and working in partnership with Waka Kotahi and NZTA. We understand that it is unreasonable for our ratepayers to foot that bill, and we're working collectively with AT in putting a submission together that says, do we need to, and do we need to review the FAR PTI rate with respect to funding ongoing OPEX to maintain this network? Because in the past we've never had operational funding at the right level to sustain the network, and that is the discussion at a strategic level that is being had, and that is part of the MROM sustainable funding model. We need to actually review the model, we need to actually review the split, and part of the investment case covers off that particular area around what is the funding responsibility of local council vis-a-vis Crown, and that comes out in some of the scenario-based modelling that we're doing with our partners AT and putting that submission forward to the Crown.
Two more quick questions, Chair, if I may, sorry. The last one, could you please explain, just for the public record, why you didn't add the lubrication to the Eastern Line when it was closed for months over the Christmas period and when you upgraded those tracks? Why did you wait for residents to contact you to say these trains are making a terrible noise for you to do something? Why wasn't it done at the time when the tracks were upgraded?
Deputy Mayor, it's a good question. So I think I covered before that we have to get the complete network to what we call an intermediate rail profile that's suitable to activate lubrication once the complete network contains RCF. To switch on those lubricators and buy those lubricators in time, there was no funding in FY24 to do that. The funding only became available as a result of the uplift that Council gave AT for FY25, and as part of the procurement strategy, we had to delay it in FY24, hence when we opened the NINT East, or the Eastern Line, we didn't have the funding, and more importantly, we weren't fully in control of all pockets of RCF under our grinding campaign. That grinding campaign ends in September this year, and we will be able to then apply the Whitmore lubrication pots across the 42 parts of the network where they need to go. And again, as I said, we'll prioritise those to those areas that have had that consistent complaints, and quite rightly from them, Eastern Bay areas, the Eastern Line areas, inclusive of Ouraki Basin, Hobson, and into the last one I mentioned.
Vector curve.
I can't remember the last one. Vector curve. Thank you.
Sorry, I don't want to monopolise, Chair, but I'll just give one last question. When you do your comms, can you try and put something up to assure Aucklanders you're keeping ahead of the curve when it comes to maintenance issues? And if funding is of issue, you have to front foot what will happen if you don't get the funding, because I think that's been a big gap in the communication. You haven't said up front, if you don't give us enough money to do X, Y will happen, and it has. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Councillor Simpson. Good questions there. We have a number of councillors lining up now, so could we keep our questions fairly concise, please? And the people, we've got the speaking order of Walker, Sayers, Baker, Turner, Hills and Ferry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Got a few questions. The first one's around the points issue that you've experienced. And you can be measured in your response. Given that this has been an issue with a supplier, is there a prospect of compensation? And I'm assuming that other entities around the planet have been similarly affected if they're supplying globally.
Yeah, that is something we will look into. At the moment, our focus is around how we can remediate the issues at the moment. So we've been working strongly with them around the latent issues with the frequency converters and all that. But what you've raised around potentially looking for compensation and all that, that'll be something that we'll talk to our commercial team about for sure, because we do have a supply arrangement with them.
The other issue just goes to issues around upgrading power supplies and ensuring that the system going forward doesn't have problems. Are you looking at battery capacity? You know, that technology exists so that trains don't stop if there's a power shortage. We know that there are going to be peak supply issues in Auckland. Are you ensuring within the system, and you know, I understand you've got fibre, that you're building alternate systems like Wi-Fi and you've got redundancy, because there's a lot happening in that space. Yeah, so are you?
I'm happy to speak to that. So in terms of ensuring power availability and the right level of resilience in the network, we have done extensive work on that to ensure that the increase in frequency that we're expecting once CRL opens is catered for. So one of the projects that we put up in a previous slide was the Western Power Feed. So we're putting in a new power feed or power supply source on the Western Line in the Glen Eden area. At the moment, the power is centrally distributed from a central part of our network around Westfield and Penrose, and by putting in that third feed, it provides that added resilience. And we also have a fourth power feed that is due to be delivered circa 2026. That is part of a funded project, and that will provide further resilience, and that one is located in South Auckland.
And how about redundancy in your sort of communications, you know, versus fibre, Wi-Fi? You know, you've got Starlink now, you've got multiple options to ensure redundancy.
Yeah, look, that's a good question. That's part of the 30-year vision and plan of where we're going to look with rail. So at the moment, we're looking at the resilience of the power, as Bobby stated, around running the metro services, and then we need to look at that as part of our business case on the longer term. I'd need to come back to council with a signalling control interface, detailed response to answer that question, and happy to take that away as an action.
And the last question, Mr. Chair, is just around modelling in your forecasts. So I have to make the assumption that you've got modelling around patronage. That also goes to modelling around stations and pedestrian movements. Is that sort of information available? Because that's going to be needed for retailers and many customers that you've got around the network.
Yeah, look, I think to that point, Councillor, I think it comes back to Councillor Desley Simpson's point around communications and also what is the benefit and value to customer. And I think that sort of modelling is certainly part and parcel of the challenge AT have given us in terms of patronage numbers at day one for CRL. You know, we want to be at 29, 30, 33 million or thereabouts annually. Sorry, not at day one, that's in 2029. But that glide path to it is a definite increase. So in terms of modelling, we need to look at that, and that's part of our thinking.
Councillor Sayers.
Yeah, thank you. Through the chair, thank you for being here this morning. Good news about those, particularly resonated with me about those trains per hour figures that you projected, so thank you for that insight. My question's around, I think, I had two questions. I think Councillor Walker asked mine about this quality control around, I don't know if it's a software or hardware issue around those frequency converters, but obviously there's some sort of quality issue there. Need to get to the bottom of that. Wouldn't mind an update on that. And also the question about, who pays for that, if it's there in terms of quality. But the trains to Huapai, terrific to see that conversation happening. You would have my political support if you need it in any way going forward. I know you'd have it off the Rodney Local Board if you need it. And I'm sure there's other councillors around the table would give that if you need it. So that's just reaching out to you. You probably can't answer this now, but can I just, around that topic, the cost of going through that tunnel seems to have a range of numbers around it. Just when you're having discussions with the Auckland Council officers, senior officers, if we can nail that down as tight as we can going forward, that might be helpful in terms of coming up with the overall way forward. But again, gentlemen, thank you for being here today.
Okay, so feedback here. I understand from the director there's the meeting with respect of Huapai between AT and Kiwi Rail on Tuesday. So that's good to see. Councillor Baker.
Thanks, team, and good to see you here. Great to see you, Bev. People won't believe it, but Bev and I used to play rugby together. Obviously, he's a lot younger than me, and he's taken the concept of looking after himself far better than I have. But good to see you here. Just so when we brought back, well, the government brought back Kiwi Rail in 2008. Has it been basically from there, and so this is leading to a question, John, or something you said, that every year there has been annual funding? That has been the mechanism by which you are funded, is you have to go cap in hand every year to the government, doesn't matter what colour the government is, and ask for money. And did I get it right, John, that is, again, you are doing it in 1 year increments currently with the current funding?
Yeah, no, it's incorrect. So the glide path before sort of 2020 was a little bit like that, because we weren't getting the operational funding to sustain the network at the right level of service in terms of maintenance and renewals. What happened with the Rail Network Investment Program, ARNIP, was recently approved by the Crown, and it is a 3-year Crown-funded cycle, remembering that the metros are co-funded. They're funded by the Crown and by local government, and then Kiwi Rail gets a top-up called the Rail Network Investment Program, which is, if you think macro level, over 3 years across the entire 3,200 kilometres of rail in New Zealand, that's $1.4 billion, right? So divide that by 3, it's about 450 or 433 million a year to help with renewals, right? And then there's the additional funding. So I was a little bit incorrect in my statement. It has been addressed since around 2020, and we're now in a really good position as of 2023, where ARNIP is now a 3-year headroom forecast for Crown funding support to the infrastructure and maintenance.
Cool, thanks. Fair to say, though, the chickens have come home to roost, though, in terms of underfunding until 2020. The second question and third question, timeline for the Pairata and Drury Central stations. So it'll be good to know, because I asked consistently about when those are likely to be online and can't find any information on it really. And then in regards to the third main, will the creation of the third main enable limited stop peak time trains from the south to I guess maximise the impact of having electrification to Pukekohe, which we're going to celebrate on the 13th of August?
Thank you, Councillor Becker. To the first question, in terms of the completion date or ready for operation date for Drury and Pairata stations, the current estimated completion date is Q4 of next year. The reason we haven't put out a specific date is because we're in the middle of the tender process, so we're getting contractors on board. The tenders for those 2 stations closed this week, and we'll go through a period of evaluating and then selecting a contractor. Once we have a contractors program confirming their ability to deliver to the program that we've put forward. We will be releasing more specific information on target completion dates, but essentially we are expecting that the stations will be ready towards the end of next year, which is in advance of CRL opening. And at the same time, we're actually trying to move Ngakaroa Station, the third of the DRS stations, as quickly as possible. So that one is lagging behind by circa 6 months. But we're working as hard as we can to try to bring that closer to the same completion date of the others. And to the second question around the third main, so third main primarily in terms of its function is to separate passenger and freight services and allow for those stopping services to allow for the express services to bypass stopping services as much as possible. The final outcome of the CRL timetable will determine what the actual train pattern is for services from South Auckland. I don't know if you're able to provide any more detail on that at this stage, John.
Yeah, part of that, to Councillor Baker, to that question, and in addition to what Bobby said, as part of the timetable planning, the hardest part of the network to achieve the optimum level of service for customers is that section, hence the criticality of third main. So we're in modelling stages now with AT and Auckland 1 with respect to what that looks like, but the intent is to actually underpin what you've stated, provide those express services through the third main, enabling it to drive the 16 trains per hour. But we'll have more on that once we land the timetable, and we've made a commitment by, the mid to the end of July. We need to be in a space where we give both AT and AOR assurance that we have that locked away, and that's contingent on the modelling we're doing on the maintenance and repair plan, because that will then drive it being ready to enable those services to run.
Cool, because I think the CRL and electrification is going to be transformational in terms of train use from the south. You throw in some...
I'm conscious of time. The other thing on that is there are concessions being made by both AT and Kiwi Rail, particularly Kiwi Rail, to look at how we optimise that. So that's also discussions.
Thank you. I couldn't help thinking about the old term, making a silk purse out of a sow's ear, as you talked. Reliability. What the modern car has got its success above anything is reliability, in my opinion, over convenience. The reliability of this train network, is there a trade-off there where we would get more reliability by lowering the expectation of the service? You're talking about we're going to have 16 trains now, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, but then you're also talking about an old freight network, which we're trying to revamp on the run into something that it's not by the sounds of things. What are we actually going to be able to achieve here?
So let me just quantify that. We have got a mixed network. It is a freight network. We have now got funding from the Crown. There's $5.5 billion of CRL and $1.9 billion of NZ upgrade programs that have gone a long way to lifting that network to a level of reliability where we can run a metro that is modern, but it is not a high-speed metro. A high-speed metro is where you can segregate both. It's either dedicated fully to passenger services, or you have ability to segregate freight and passenger trains. The 30-year vision is that we will have a 4-track railway where we will be able to segregate. We're not there yet. So I think it's the expectation that we need to just temper everyone's, we need to temper what we have in front of us. We are recovering from legacy underfunding. We're in a very good space now to achieve an objective. We would not have gone without the evidence we have with our asset management maturity now, with our partners AT and with our partners Auckland 1 as an alliance, and said we can achieve 16. I'm extremely confident as I sit here, responsible for this metro, to make sure that we'll get there, because I know the work that's being done, that there's a lot of hard work being done, and we will get there. The issue around reliability and punctuality of the timetable, those rates will lift once we address the rest of the rail network rebuild, which is addressing formation at 159 million. We will then address the backlog for FY25 to the tune of around 50 million of expired and expiring assets that are critically and health-wise need to be replaced. And then we've got the funding lift of $20 million in addition to FY24 that was provided by AT. We've gone from 45 to 65 million, and that includes critical spares of 9.5 million to add resilience so that we have the capacity to address and stop this lumpiness we're going through now. So I'm very confident that we will get to that objective. The issue is there is ongoing disruption because you think about it, you get an old car and a new car, one's going to run really reliably and the old car's not, and it's going to have servicing. We're trying to upgrade and re-engine the old car so it can be as good as a brand new car. And we're on that glide path to that improvement plan. So, yeah.
Okay, let's look to wind this item up, folks. We've been on it for well over an hour. We've only got Councillor Hills, Ferry and Bartley.
Kia ora, thank you, and great to hear that the extra money that we all push for is going to good use. I have some questions about the current network and then the future. Just on the current, I guess, what is the proactivity around when all those issues happen? I mean, in February when I asked the Mayor to write to you guys and to the Minister over 22 days of disruptions in January, Feb, it didn't feel like, and no offence, but it didn't feel like there was any sort of proactive moves from KiwiRail until it kind of blew up in the media. So I guess, how can I be confident that behind the scenes you guys are jumping in as fast as you can to fix, especially all these signal failures, which feel like the least...
Proactivity, there's a question there.
Sorry, can you just repeat that, please? It's a little bit confusing. I've got I picked three things out of that. Proactive forecasting and heading off the unknowns.
I guess,
and then
yeah,
the communications to customer.
Yeah. So, I guess at the beginning of the year there was 22 days and then a myriad of other things have happened since then. But when the signal failures happen and you say you're going to get a team maybe on the ground to be close to it, but what is the length of time getting it fixed or getting the messages out to customers? It doesn't feel... You know, people complain to us about how shocking everything is, and I don't feel like there's proactive nature around these issues as they happen or before they happen.
Okay, I think I need to take that away as a challenge with respect to joint comms and the timeliness of information to customer. I do know that in terms of the active repair plans and our network control management, we have to respond to a signal incident within 45 minutes in accordance with the ANAA, and we have those assets available to do that. With respect to the double slip and Britomart whole situation we had with multiple disruptions in the January-February period, as a result of that, you know, all of our technical design, all of the installation, all of the designs at that time pointed that we'd done everything right. And until you have those something's not right, you then commission a third party, which has been done through Sistra under a staged plan to actually... I take your point. How can we be better? We need to be better with joint communications with AT and AOR, and AROC is the platform for that, and we're getting better, but we're not good enough yet. So I've got that as a takeaway, and I think it's a very good question.
Thank you. And is there any technology on top of that that you could be looking at that automates any of it? Are you looking further than the manual things you have to do to fix these issues? Or does it have to affect the whole network every time?
Okay, so stage 3 of the Sister review, which is underway, is that total signals control interface audit by an international renowned expert. You know, that's what they do. They're coming in and challenging our current supplier, our current methods, and future-proofing what we need to do now and in the future using technology to be better. So that third stage of the review won't start until Bevan's completed stage 2, but it will go for a period of 6 to 12 months and will cover the entire network. So it is a work in progress.
Thank you. And just on the future network, thank you for the map is a little confusing, but I think I can look into it in the future. But it does look like the off-peaks are staying fairly the same. You know, are you giving, and I do worry about your comment around where retrofitting a freight network when we're sort of almost 15 years into electrification, it is no surprise that it is a human moving network as well. But what are we doing to make sure the investment in the City Rail Link makes far more sense than just the 4 off-peak trains an hour?
So part of the timetable modelling, which we're landing at the end of we're just finishing off this next 18-month glide path to use the 159 the 65 plus the split of the backlog renewals. That has to be delivered in the 12 to 18 months. So at the moment we're creating one work bank. Once that work bank's landed, which will be at the middle of July, we will then know. We'll superimpose the timetable over the 16 trains to our timetable, and we'll be able to look at parts of the network where we're operating at optimum, or where we can increase inter-peak services. So the intention is not to reduce frequency. The intention is to underpin AT's model, which is we want to run trains and leave no one behind. That is the full intention of what we want to try and deliver on the model. So are we looking at technology, and are we looking at ways of improving inter-peak? Yes. Where are we at? We're developing the model, the timetable to confirm that. And just one point to finish off, the network is not broken, people. It is, what I'm using as an analogy is we've got a freight network which we've now upgraded significantly to be a modern metro, and we're nearly there. Please don't be alarmist in my comment. It's not designed to be alarmist. It's designed to be truthful, factual of what we're running. And what we are now doing is we're optimising that network so we can run a metro. And we are extremely confident we can run that metro.
Councillor Ferry.
Thanks. My question's around the signalling works and the impact that they're having on some of the level crossing removals, the pedestrian-focused ones that are happening at the moment. I guess I've got a second question as well, but my first question is around, it's become apparent that some of the timing around those level crossings being removed, I'm particularly thinking about Lloyd Avenue, has been because of changes to signalling in sort of, a dig once type approach. Can we have some comms around that? Because I think that's something that the community hasn't been aware of, that sometimes we're doing something that seems early, and it feels like a reduction in service and access for people because they're no longer able to use the level crossing there. But actually there are some behind the scenes reasons why it needs to happen before CRL starts. We've talked about the fact that some of it's about, the chicken looks like it's cooked, but actually the inside's still cooking, for the CRL aspect of it. But reasonably recently I found out that there's some signalling work happening at the same time, and that seems to me quite a compelling case. So could you maybe expand a little bit, given the chat we've already had about signalling this morning? Is that tied in with this? And then I've got one more question, please, Chair.
I might talk to that. So I will have to get back to you, if that's all right, Councillor Ferry, just in terms of the specific reasons around Lloyd Ave. But as an overall approach, there is a first tranche of pedestrian crossings and level crossings that must be removed in readiness for CRL opening. The rollout and the timing of that has been sequenced in a way that is most effective and allows us to achieve that readiness for CRL day one. So Auckland Transport leads that program of removal of work. So we'll take that offline and discuss with them and come back with the details specific to Lloyd Ave, but also around the timing that's been selected for that first tranche. So where we're currently at is there is a program for that first tranche, and the removal of these is following the planned program, and we can come back on the reasons specifically for why the program is what it is.
Okay, we have had some information on that already. I'm thinking more about the public information about how it ties in with some of the signalling aspects that you've already raised this morning. That's the very specific thing there. The other thing is just as a more general piece around level crossings, and I imagine we'll have some more discussion about this later today when we workshop the RLTP aspects. It's something that's coming up a lot, the complexity of some of the level crossing works that are required, and the fact that at the moment we don't have any funding to do them, that we're potentially looking at some kind of other mechanism with central government to find the funding. But I'm really nervous about the fact we're not necessarily identifying this in the RLTP at this point. So is there any sort of comment from Kiwi Rail on obviously we've got Takanini identified, and that's great, but there are a lot more to do. Some of them we would anticipate, I would hope, doing in the next 10 years, and yet at this point we don't seem to be reflecting that in the RLTP. So is there any ask or any data from Kiwi Rail that could support us in that? Thank you.
In terms of the detail, QRL is supporting Auckland Transport in this, so the removal of the level crossings program is Auckland Transport led. QRL supports in the way of the changes that need to be made to the rail network and the trigger for the removal, which is either increase in train frequency or expansion of the rail network. So it's done on a safety basis that determines the requirement for whether a level crossing can be safely provided or if we need an alternate solution. So the program that is being looked at for potential removal of level crossings as the rail network expands and rail frequency increases is being led by Auckland Transport. It's looking across the network as a whole. So the next stage with that and what's currently being worked on is a business case, a single stage business case that is looking at everything post CRL Day 1. So as I mentioned earlier, there's a tranche of crossings, pedestrian crossings primarily, that need to be removed to ensure safe start of operations for CRL Day 1. And the current stage is the single stage business case that picks up all the rest, looking at future growth.
Yeah, so we have had we've started that conversation with AT last week actually, which was good. But I guess what I'm looking for here is some support from Kiwi Rail around, I guess, the political ask of the funding, and acknowledging you probably can't say yes or no right now, but that would be something I would see as a high priority for our next update. That would be useful.
100%. Just to add to that, Councillor Ferry, from Bobby's summation, that is in the design thinking around the rail systems knowledge to build the business case with AT in terms of what the impact looks like. So that's certainly front of mind, and I agree with you. This is part of the sustainable funding that we need to address around grade separation, level crossing removal as part of the future of rail, and we're totally aligned with AT with respect to making sure that that's in our joint thinking.
Thank you.
Councillor Bartley, could you finish off the questions, please?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the report. That's 1,303 cancellations January to February this year. And infrastructure, motor points, hot tracks, the Eastern Line closed for 9 months, and then the issue with the hot tracks. So it's fair to say public confidence is at a low in using the trains. Some of the comments, it runs like a 15-year-old MacBook, and a lot are saying that it's third world. Do you agree that the train network infrastructure is third world? If not, why not?
Yeah, I acknowledge that people are frustrated, and I think frustration both on social media and in how people are feeling based on what we're trying to do to improve the network creates those connotations of, do we know what we're doing? And all I can say is that firstly, communications are key. I think joint communications are key, and we need to be better. The second thing is this isn't a third world railway. I've been to third world railways. I've lived 15 years overseas in many countries from the Middle East through to Asia, and they don't have metros in some of those countries. I think we need to be better in the way we communicate to our people the reality and the true picture. And I think in the past, I think all people, and when I say all people, I mean all people within our alliance, have potentially overpromised and not delivered because they didn't know what they didn't know. We're now in a position where we know, based on what our asset management data is telling us, because we were directed by the Crown under the rapid review and the Deloitte's report, along with the higher level infrastructure review in 2021, to be better. And we were given the funding. $8.8 billion has gone into the network to recover something that wasn't funded for a number of years. And we're doing very good work to improve. And unfortunate thing is, Councillor Bartley, is that it's a painful period for our people and our customers, and perhaps our communication needs to be better. So I don't think we have a third world network at all. I think we have a really solid network that's it's improving, and we'll have a modern metro on the time of CRL Day 1.
Thank you. So this lumpy period that you described we're going through right now, this painful period, you're saying we could be over it Day 1 CRL?
I think, as I say, we've made that commitment of 16 trains per hour. I think we will be in a far better place in the next 18 months as we go through this glide path where you'll see positive results. In terms of, just as to paint a last picture, and I'm conscious of time, Chair, I'm sorry, but this is important. When we handed back the Eastern Line and when we handed back NAL South after shutting it sorry, let me just retract this. NAL,
The Eastern Line.
when we handed back the Eastern Line, when we handed back the Eastern Line after it's shut, we increased the frequency of trains by 50%, and the number of faults reduced by something like 78%. These are the figures for that section of line. So where we go in and do invasive work, and we do the drainage, the formation, and we reset the geometry of the track so that the water drains away and everything is sitting like a modern house foundation, it's really good to go. We're getting positive benefit, right? We've got to be better at articulating and telling that story, and also following it up with data. So you've given me some good takeaways, Councillor, and in terms of comms and sending the right message and giving a time horizon. So thank you.
Okay, that brings the questions to an end. Thank you to our presenters from Kiwi Rail. You can maybe step back from the table now. I haven't got any speakers. I think that's been well and truly canvassed. So appreciate the questions from, particularly from Councillor Simpson and Bartley. I think they're probably reflective of the mood of commuters. So Councillor Simpson is happy to move that we receive the update from Kiwi Rail. Do we have a seconder by Councillor Baker? All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Okay, thank you again, team.
Thanks, Mr. Chair.
We're going to have a couple of minute break as Auckland Transport come up for their update, and hopefully we can expedite matters a bit during this section of the agenda. So Stacey will come up the team. In the meantime, we'll have 2 or 3 minutes break for people just to stretch their legs. Thank you.